Hello everyone and welcome to this session. I am absolutely delighted to be premiering this session on customer insights, getting started, getting certified, why you should be doing all this and why it's exciting. My name is Lisa Crosbie. Please feel free to follow me, connect with me. You'll find me on LinkedIn and Twitter. I also do a podcast and I'm all over this stuff on YouTube as well. My job title is actually genuinely evangelist. I work for a company called Barhead Solutions here in Australia, in case you hadn't already spotted that from my accent. Huge thank you to the team at DynamicsCon for putting on this event. I love it when we can have things that are free for the community. So much awesome learning and lots of other fabulous sessions on the agenda. So make sure you check those out. So why bother, right? We're here to learn about customer insights, and presumably you've got some idea why you're here by joining this session in the first place. But it's all about me. It's all about the customer. What we're seeing within the platform, and most of you watching this are probably coming from a Microsoft business applications background. That's certainly where I've come from. Dynamic sales, customer service, perhaps marketing, those kinds of things. We're seeing a massive new important direction that affects us in business applications, which is starting to get into some of these other technologies. And frankly, across everything we do, we now need to be best friends with Teams, with the data platform, with AI, with all of these things, because it's not just about that central kind of CRM piece anymore. It hasn't been for a while. So the whole point of customer insights and the bigger picture direction of what's going on with marketing in the platform is personalization, hyper-personalization, which is it's all about me. So everything we're doing now when we start to look at the customer engagement applications is about customer experience and personalized customer experience. And so customer insights is really at the heart of being able to do that. And the reason you should bother, sales, marketing, customer insights together is increasingly going to be the answer to what we need to do for our customers in this space. So what I'm going to take you through in the presentation today is how to get started. I'm assuming that maybe you've dabbled a little bit in customer insights. I'm going to take you through some of the core concepts, but I'm really getting you from a sort of, I know I need to know this, but I don't know what I don't know, through to now I know what's what, where to find the information, and how to prepare myself for certification. We've got 40 minutes together today. I'm going to be around at the end to answer questions, so please make sure you pop questions in the chat as we go, and I'll be answering those live at the end. But it's 40 minutes, right, to prepare for an exam and to learn customer insights. It's big. If you imagine learning the sales application from start, I probably couldn't get you there in 40 minutes either. So I hope by the end of this session, you will have a really good overview of what's what and where to go to take those next steps and give you some structure around it. So to start with here, how to get started, core concepts, what it is, how to sort of piece it together, and how to get hands-on. And then I'm going to spend most of the session here giving you a demo in a structured way, pointing out things you need to deep dive in. And then after the demo, I'm going to come back and talk to you about the brand new MB260 certification, which I've done in beta in preparation for this session, and give you some advice on how you can prepare for that exam so that you can go ahead and do that. So first up, a bit of terminology here. Customer insights used to be one of these things, and now it's actually got two sub-brands underneath it, but we tend to still just call it customer insights when we're referring to what's actually called audience insights now. So terminology here and concepts here, and this is something you will need to know for the exam, is that there are actually two different pieces within inside customer insights. One of them, which is the thing we used to call customer insights on its own, is called audience insights. That's the piece that is about bringing together a unified profile of the customer. So this is essentially the core of what we're doing with this, is to say, you've got customer data all over the place, siloed data sources, and that holy grail of getting a 360-degree view of the customer is what we're enabling with this system here. That's what Audience Insights is doing. It can do it for both B2B and B2C scenarios, so you can do it at an account level or a contact level. And as we go through this, you'll see there's a lot going on there. Beyond just creating those profiles, we can start to do clever things with really understanding who is our customer and getting that unique customer profile. Over on the right-hand side of the screen, the other thing we've got here is engagement insights. Now, I don't like to put brackets preview in there, but honestly, brackets preview. Engagement insights is this is my wording now, not an official Microsoft thing, obviously. Think about what Google Analytics does. It's that kind of thing. That's the shortest explanation for it. It's tracking behavior on your digital properties. So what are people doing on your website? What are they clicking on? What are they opening? Where are they coming from? And then the beauty of this is that we can bring these things together so that part of understanding the customer profile is also understanding the behavior. Now, in terms of time allocation and exam allocation and things here, it's like audience insights, engagement insights. You need to know that engagement insights exists. You need to know it's part of the product. You need to know kind of ballpark, broadly speaking, what it does and how it relates to audience insights. But honestly, put your energy into learning the audience insights part of it at this stage anyway. Engagement insights is still a fairly early preview functionality, so there's not a lot of depth in the learning materials and in the exam, but you do need to be aware that it is part of it. And then just to align you, and there's a lot of words on the screen here, but I'll take you through this, just to clear up the confusion with the other insights things, because we've got a lot of things going on here. Generally, whenever Microsoft is using insights in a product name, it's around that piece that's using AI and BI, like reporting and artificial intelligence, to help you understand what's going on with your data. So Customer Insights that we're looking at today is a standalone product. It's called Dynamics 365 Customer Insights. It's ready-made to plug and play and work with Dynamics 365 sales and marketing, but you can actually use it completely standalone. A customer could come to this for the first time and connect it to other systems they're using without even using another Dynamics customer engagement product. It's all about creating a unique customer profile, siloed data sources coming together so that you really truly understand your customer and then do clever things with it. And we're going to see as we go through this, it's about creating that unique profile and measures and segments and things, and then putting that back into the systems of business, the business systems, putting it back into where your users actually are. So you'll have data administrators and data wranglers and so on working in customer insights, but the majority of your users are going to experience this by having a unified timeline in their CRM or a unified KPI card somewhere or a marketing segment. They're not going to be getting in and doing it. Sales Insights is an add-on to the sales application. That name is starting to disappear a little bit now. It's been called Sales Premium. Increasingly, it's creeping back into Sales Standard as well. Sales Insights is essentially about adding AI into the sales application. And I know there are some other sessions that will be covering that kind of stuff. Things like relationship health, predictive scoring, all of those kinds of things on which opportunities are likely to close. So a completely different thing. And then the one that's most often confused, Customer Insights, Customer Service Insights. This one's probably lesser known, but again, it's a completely different thing. It's an add-on embedded into Dynamics 365 Customer Service or Omnichannel, essentially giving you a beautiful kind of dashboard and analytics on what kind of topics are emerging, with analysis over the language being used there and so on. So really, where you're looking at Sales Insights and Customer Service Insights, those are things embedded in and part of those other customer engagement applications. Customer Insights is a whole other separate standalone piece. Of course, it works back with these things, but it actually exists in its own right. So core concepts and capabilities, and this is once we go into the demo, which is the almost next part, I'm going to take you through in this order. And I think this is helpful in just orienting you around how to get started, how to get certified. As I said, where I can't cover all the depth of it, these are the core pieces that you need to get across. The first, biggest, most important one is unify, because the first thing we do if we're bringing together our customer data is bring together the customer data. So what we do is we connect to all of the different data sources and we go through this 3M process of mapping the data against the common data model. We're going to get to that in a second. Matching it. How are the profiles matched together? We don't have a unique key for each person, but do we want to match on first name, last name, email address, those kinds of things, and what's our tolerance for variation across the different data sources? And then merging that together so that we're getting fields that are similar to each other collapsed into the same space. So that is It's like 20 or 25% of the exam, and honestly, the absolute core starting point of the product. So I'm going to spend a bit of time there showing you that. Then we get into okay, great, so what? Now I've got my data unified. What's so important about that? What's so special about that? These are the things that we can do with it. So prediction type things, we can create measures at the level of the customer. We can create measures across the business. We can start to bring in intelligence, and there are some built-in AI models. That's my favorite part, actually. Things about like churn score, customer lifetime value predictions, those kinds of things in there. And it's a little wizard style interface, so you can be like super clever without actually building a machine learning model. Or if you're genuinely super clever, you can bring your own machine learning model in there. The segmenting part is very, very rich. And again, I'm going to highlight a few things here, but we won't go into it in great depth, which is about being able to segment on all of that data that's in there, not just what's in your Dynamics 365 environment, but all of those data sources now can be used to do segments. And then there's some intelligence going overlaid on top of that. I'm going to spend most of the time looking at those things. We've also got the ability to do export, extend, those kinds of things. So we can export to Dynamics 365, export a marketing list, export a segment, those kinds of things, and then extend by putting the stuff into the other business applications. And then I'm going to skip over engagement insights. It's a core thing you need to know, but I'm not going to show it to you today. Enriching is something else I'll mention briefly, which is that you can start to pick up other things in your data about, this person is in a certain demographic and geographic location, and therefore they're likely to have affinity for certain interests or brands and so on. So I'm going to emphasize this a lot. Get hands-on with the product. This exam and the learning, it's like learning a customer engagement app. If you start learning sales from scratch, you wouldn't get very far without getting hands-on. You can sign up for a free trial and get in and play around. And I just want to show you what happens with the trial here, because this one here, and I've given you a short link here, a bit.ly link, that /CI data there, so that you can jump straight to part of the learning path. I'm going to come back to this, because what happens when we get into a trial, and I'll switch across to that now, is that when we go into the trial, you'll find that there are two options in here. There's a demo and there's a trial, and they're both useful, but they're useful for different purposes. And so pointing out to you where you can get your own sample data to kind of properly get hands-on is really important here. Once we're done with the demo, I'm going to take you through what's in the exam and also, how to get started with the learning path and so on. Don't forget, pop questions in the chat here as we go, and I will answer those for you at the end. All right. Good morning. It's greeting me by name. You got to love that. So there's a couple of things going on. I've already signed up for the trial. You go to that link, you put in your work email address, and it's a standard kind of trial sign up process. It's really easy. So what happens here is the first thing you get here is select an industry demo, and you've got a lovely drop down list of all of these things. I've chosen hospitality, but if you choose any of the others, and you can actually choose multiples of them, what happens is it creates different environments up here. So here's your environment selector. I've done consumer goods as well as the hospitality demo in there. So you can actually choose as many of those as you like. They are pre-configured, and it's like instant to set it up with data sets, with measures, with segments. So if you really want to get in and look at what it looks like when it's richly populated with data for an industry, that's a really good way to go. However, you can't practice the map, match, merge, which is that unification of the data, which is, like I said, like 20-25% of what you need to know for the exam. You can't practice that in those environments because it won't let you edit anything. So the thing you're going to want to do, and I've done this beforehand just so that we don't have to sit and watch stuff, is you click on this Create Environment button, and that will take you through a little wizard here. I've called mine very originally Contoso, so that this is now a trial environment as opposed to those demos, and you want to switch back and forth. But once I'm in here, then I can start to go ahead and actually play with some data sources in here. Now, that link that I gave you earlier will take you through to one of the learning modules, and I'll give you a link to the full learning path here at the end. But there's a really good set of learning modules in Microsoft Learn that's just been added recently. And in one of those learning modules, we've actually got this piece here, which is an exercise that takes you through creating a customer insights instance. So this has got all the instructions around the trial and so on. But the thing that I just had on that last slide in there is that this this has links to sample data. Here we go here. Now don't click on the link. If you click on the link, you'll just get a Azure blob kind of a blob of data. What you want to do is right click on that. And in fact, I'm going to grab the one I want here, which is the loyalty scheme. I'm going to right click on that and say copy link. And we're going to use that in a second. So this is giving you instructions on how to do this. And I highly recommend you work through this for that unification process at the very least, because this is really important. So I've done the first couple of tasks just so that we can see that there was something in there already. I can go back here. So just to orient you around what we're doing with customer insights, we've got customers in the end, which is going to be where our unified profiles end up. But this data menu here is where we're starting to bring in all of those data sources. And we're going to look at segments and measures and intelligence a little bit later. So I'm going to start with unify. So this is this core concept, map, match, merge, and you'll see those three things come up there, map, match, merge. And I'm going to, no, I don't want to do that yet. I want to add another data source first. Sorry, we're going to add the data source first and then we map, match, merge. So we've got different import methods. Again, when you get to the exam, you need to know what the different import methods are, how they work, things about how often they refresh. All of that's in the learning path and more than I can get to in detail here, but we're going to give it a name to start with. So this one is the loyalty data. We go next, and this is one where I'm just connecting, importing. This is the most common way that you would do it. I'll refer at the end, there's some additional technologies in here, related technologies. You'll see things like Azure, Synapse Analytics, Azure Data Lake, the Common Data Model, all of those kinds of things. You need to kind of have your head around what they are and how they relate to this, but you don't need to go deep into all of those, but you need to understand those sort of surrounding pieces. So these are all of the different kinds of things that you can connect to and import from. Again, you don't need to memorize all of this stuff, but be aware that there's a big range of things. For the exercise that's in the learning path here, we can go in and just say, yep, I'm gonna choose a text or CSV file. And now that link that I copied earlier that I right-clicked, I'm gonna paste in there. And this is linking to an online sample data source that's stored in a Azure Blob storage somewhere, I think. We don't need to worry too much about that. Obviously, if you're doing this in real life, you'd have that there. But for learning, this is the best way to learn because you actually get access to those things. So while that's thinking about that, I'm just going to go back and have a look at my instruction here. I didn't name it loyalty scheme. I named it loyalty, but we're good. I've chosen my text CSV, and then this is going to come up. And what we're going to do is go through an experience here of transforming the data. So we've got this coming up here. Now, if you've used this is Power Query. If you use Power Query here, you'll recognize this. If you've worked in Power BI, you'll recognize into this. So this is actually, we're getting into a data platform here. It's called a customer data platform. So we're starting to use some different tools that won't be familiar to you if you've worked exclusively in that business applications space. Transform the data. So this is one of those related technologies that I'm going to recommend you get your head around, Power Query. I'm not a super expert in Power Query, but you need to know the concepts of what it is and what it does. And this is essentially giving you the ability to transform, clean up, shape your data on the way in. If your data was a complete mess, you'd want to have done some work beforehand rather than doing it here, but this is on the ingestion part, a chance to do that. First thing we're going to do here is go in and say, use the first row as headers, because you can see I've got a first row in there. So we'll do that, and that's just going to promote that first row up to there. And then we want to put in a definition of some of the other data types here. So we're going to change the date of birth to be a date, the reward points to be a whole number, and the created on. It's really important that as you bring the data in that you are aligning it to the right data type, because then what happens in the map stage, which is the first one, it's going to map your data to what's called the common data model. So this is a core concept to get across underneath, which is they use the word semantic definition, some different terminology here to refer to, is this particular data attribute a person's name, or is it a location, or is it a number, is it a, whatever it is, there's a whole bunch of definitions under there. And Customer Insights is basically taking the data that you bring in and doing that matching for you, whereas traditionally in this space, you would have to go through and actually do all of that matching manually. So it's using sort of the clever stuff in the system to do that for you. So doing the definition of things properly here is going to make that process a whole lot better. So what did I say? We were doing date of birth here. So I'm going to click on that little icon that says that's currently text, which it isn't. And I'm going to say that's a date. we needed the reward points to be a whole number. So we'll just find that. Scroll across here. Reward points, there we go. So that's going to be a whole number. And the last one was created on should be date, time, zone. So we'll find that one there. Created on, date, time, zone. We're good. And it's given it a name. If I was doing this properly, I'd probably, check the name of my query a bit more carefully, but it will do the job. And we're just going to say next, and then that will go through. So first thing you're doing in all of this, you're going to choose your refresh options in there, and then that's brought all of your data sources in. So you're going to do that 5 or 6 times if you follow those instructions through. I won't do it 5 or 6 times in our time today. We've got enough time to have a look at that once. And then the process here of map, match, merge, I'm going to switch across into one of the other sort of, existing trial systems here where it's already been pre-configured so that you can see it. So make sure you're doing this per the instructions though, so that you can get that experience yourself. So from here, I'm just going to switch hats back into this hospitality demo, which means that we can see something where it's already been prepared earlier. So data sources there, they've got a bunch of things in there. We've got the hospitality system, survey system, ticketing system. You'll see I can't edit those. But if I go into the Unify, we can see what's going on with this map, match, merge process. So firstly, the map process is about saying, what is the shape of your data? What does it look like so that the system understands how to merge it in the end. So we're saying, what is the primary key if there is one? And then you'll see on the hospitality customers, we've got all of these different things in here, and it's actually used these semantic data definitions to say, this is a type of phone, this is a type of name, this is a type, there's all of that going on underneath. So it will do that for you, but you have the chance to correct it. So you can go through and do a check. But that process, and this is a really core part of what it's doing, is speeding that up so that you don't have to do all of that manually. It's a little bit magic, right? So now we get to match, which is great. You've got all these data sources in here. How are you going to unify them together, and what are your rules for unifying them? So if you're working in a marketing scenario, say it's hospitality, we want to be marketing to people, we've got people coming from a ticketing system and a loyalty system and so on, we might allow a little bit more of a fuzzy match than if I was in financial services where, you really want to make sure that that unique profile is exactly the right customer. So you can choose how you set these things up. So we've got an example here of a match. So this is saying we're going to match these two things based on the name field, and we're going to use basic precision. But you'll see you've got different options here for precision. We can go basic, low, medium, high, exact, or you can actually sort of go custom and on a scale of, I want that to be 47% accurate. I'm sure there is genuine kind of science behind that. That's a little bit beyond me, but you can set the precision there. So we can say, basic precision is going to really kind of match things that it thinks are the same, whereas exact precision is going to be only exactly the same first name and last name. We've got options in between there. Generally speaking, you're probably going to go a bit lower than exact with something like this. We might want, if I've come in as my last name is misspelt in one version of the data or something, then it's likely to align those things if we don't have it matched. So we can have more than one condition. So the way this was set up was to say, we've got the names, basic precision. We're also sort of matching on email with an exact. So we're looking for those things, exact email, similar name. So you can set up whatever you want in there. And then the final stage of all of this is somewhat anticlimactic. We've done the map, figures out what your data looks like. We've done the match, which is defining how we want those pieces to come together. And then the merge part is really the sort of the engine of it. We're going to run this thing. But the other thing we do here is we start to say from these different data sources, and we've only got 3 in here, which fields are the same. Like that, we've got these ones called city, 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 state. So it's kind of putting those things in buckets together of the same definition, so that when we get our profile out the other end, it knows, that those things sort of belong together. And then we click, save and run, and it does its thing in the background. So the result of all of that then is that we end up with these customer profiles. And I'm just going to sort of randomly click on one of these things here to show you what happens. So we end up with Leonard, Troy. In here, we've got a unique customer ID. So it's actually creating its own unique customer profile, pulling all of these things together, date of birth, all of these things. And then we start to bring together this activity timeline. That's not a particularly well populated one, but all of the different data sources that you get and things that you've defined as you've brought your data sources in. If you've defined them with a date in there of when it happened, it can be defined as an activity. And then we can now have a unified timeline of all of the things that that person did from all of the different data sources. The bit on the right here, I haven't shown you that. We're going to get to next. That's all the stuff about starting to bring in the intelligence and the measures and the segments and the enrichments and so on. But for now, those first two columns, we've got a unique customer profile. We've got activities in there, and then we can start to see the shape of what's going on with that person. Let's have a look at some of the clever stuff because we go, great, Lisa, awesome, thanks, so what? So I've given you a, 10-minute explanation there of that unify process. You're going to want to spend more than 10 minutes on it in learning it and figuring all that stuff out. There's a lot more depth there in things about data, sources, different ways of connecting, different ways of refreshing, exactly going through that map, match, merge process. But that should give you enough to kind of know what you don't know and allow you to get into it. So measures is the next thing. Once we've got all that data together, we can start to set measures. So we've got measures that can be done at a customer level, either as a customer attribute, like a single point score, how highly engaged are they, or something you might want to slice and dice, how many visits per month, how many purchases per month. And we can also create business measures, KPIs, over a whole set of customers there. So we can set up different measures in the system. And this is something where you can either build your own. I'll go into choose a template here. Lots of templates and things going on in here now that make it easy for you to play around. So you can see you can use those and choose a wizard style interface. Or you can build your own measure in here by going in, and this is really starting to use, all of the sort of little formulas and things to add things in. So we can sort of select a function here. So we could say the average of something and build the relationship path. So again, it's worth spending a bit of time here to understand there's those 3 different types of measures, the different types of attributes, functions, and things that can go into creating them. Because what that lands us with at the end, if we go back to our friend Leonard here, is that we've got these types of things. These are measures, the average number of nights stayed, average days to ticket resolution, all those kinds of things are sitting there on the customer. Now, all of these things can be used elsewhere, right? So we can push these things, we can push the activity timeline out to dynamic sales and have it sitting there. Same with these KPIs and measures and things can all be enabled to go out into other applications. You want to build a Power App with that in it? You want to do that? You want to build a flow based off this. You want to build a Power BI report using this stuff. That's where you're headed with all of these things. Back to, so we've done measures. The other piece in here, and I did say this was my favorite part, intelligence predictions in here. So we've got my predictions where I can bring in my machine learning models that I've created in Azure Machine Learning. I haven't personally got that skill set. Many people who use this system won't. Certainly for the exam, you need to know that it's a thing, but you don't need to be building machine learning models to pass this exam. But we've got these in here. So these are wizard style things that you can use. So we can go in here and say, I want to create a customer churn model, a product recommendations model. Let's just sort of go into the first one here. Am I trying to predict a churn related to subscriptions or, transactions? And it tells me what I need. I need to have data in the system that's defined by this. You can use this in different ways, right? So this is asking for like an order ID, order amount, but this could also be, for instance, I've done a lot of work in the nonprofit space. Donations have the same shape as that data. So you can use that for where are we likely to have churn on a recurring donation, for instance. So, you can think beyond what's on the screen with the wizard, because as long as you've got some kind of transactional thing that has an amount and a date and an ID, it might be an online purchase, it might be a donation to a nonprofit. So we can go through and sort of, put in the name. I'm just going to try not to spend too much time typing things in here, but just to give you a sense of how easy this is, we want to identify customers who will churn in the next, 30 days. If they've made no purchases in a week, I'm just randomly clicking things here to show you. We go in and select the data that's in there and go through and review and run. So that will allow you to create predictions, which can then be used as the basis for segments, which is the next thing I'm going to show you, and also to be used on the profile. So now you imagine you're back in your business system and the user can be interacting with someone and they can see this person is, a high purchase value and high risk of churn. Remember my first slide there about it's all about me? Now our business system and our users and everyone is informed by those things in terms of how we're communicating with that person, how we're automating anything, prioritizing. You're on a phone call and you can make them a special offer or do something like that. So that's where it all starts to come back together in that highly personalized experience. Now, segmenting here, honestly, I'm going to spend a couple of minutes here, but this is a space where you could spend, and I recommend you do spend quite a bit of time here. I feel like in doing my exam, my regret is that I didn't spend more time here in preparation for the exam. So I'm going to give you that recommendation because there's more going on here than there used to be. So with segments, this is one of the most important output things. This is where we can connect back to Dynamics marketing or other marketing systems, but you want to be using Dynamics marketing. So you can build a segment here based on all of these data sources. So if you're in Dynamics marketing, you've got the Dynamics data available to you to make segments on, whereas here you've got where are we with this? We've got the purchasing, the hotel stays, the loyalty program, all of those things. So we can say, let's make a segment of people who are, living in Sydney, who have stayed more than 6 nights in a hotel, who are loyalty members, who are at high risk of churn, right? You can start to bring all these things together and now you've got a really specific segment, and then we can export that out to Dynamics sales, Dynamics marketing to use those things. So you can build your own. And again, there's a lot going on here, right? The whole segment builder, it's a little bit like what you've seen in Dynamics marketing, but then, and you've got a bunch of different things in there that you can work with. But we've also got the ability here to create from profiles or measures. So this is where we were before in those measures, is we can say, let's select an attribute. So let's put in average number of nights stayed. And then we can say, is that greater than? But what I've got here is a little preview across my data. So if I'm trying to find people, I want the top 20% of my customers, it's telling me where that line is, or if I want the top 5% of my customers or the bottom 5. So it's actually saying, instead of me guessing the value, I've got this in context here. So if I want to find my top 5 or my top 75 there, then I can put in that value of 7 because I can see that it's there. So those things are starting to work together there if you've got those measures in place. Now, this is the area you really want to deep dive into. This one says brackets preview, but we've got this ability to get suggested segments. And this is getting rich and kind of very exciting in here, where we can start to say, all right, well, I can set my segment based on these things, but now you can have AI suggesting different segments for you, things on recency, frequency, value of customer transactions, and so on, things you want to use to hit a goal. I can't get into that much depth here, but I highly recommend, in kind of learning this stuff and preparing for the exam, spend time on the stuff about the data, the unifying of the data, and also this part in segments. There's a lot going on in there that is all covered in that learning path as well. All right, so we have looked at, we've been through our data coming in, which is that core part of it. We've looked at the measures, the intelligence, the segments. Let's just have a brief look here at enrichments, and then I'm going to talk about the exam before we run out of time. Don't forget, pop your questions in the chat if you've got questions about all of this stuff, and I will answer at the end. So what we've got here, enrichment, I've talked about exporting a fair bit already. So enrichment, this allows you to bring in either third-party services, and again, you don't need to know all of those, but you need to know that they're a thing. Within the Microsoft stack, we've got brand affinity and interest affinity, and then these are other things that are starting to be brought in from other services. So if we just have a look at this, what this is doing is saying, we're enriching those profiles. This is in hospitality, so we're picking other brands in hospitality and the share of voice of those brands, so we can see who our customers are likely to be interested in. Same with other, so brand affinity and interest affinity. If I go back to customers here, let's pick pick on someone else this time. So we can see here is the interest for customers like Jeremy, brands for customers like Jeremy. So this is not stalking Jeremy's behavior in particular, but it's saying based on Jeremy as a male of a certain age in a certain place, he is likely to be interested in this. And so you can bring in even more sophisticated third-party enrichment tools. On the other side, on the exports then, I've talked about exporting to Dynamics 365 sales and marketing, but we've also got the ability to export out into other kinds of third-party things here. So this is where we start to get into really sophisticated things. It's not sitting in exports, it's actually sitting in connections here. So we've got different things here that we can export to these different types of connections. So campaign monitor, there's like advertising services, Google ads, Facebook ads. So all of those things of being able to do that export. Now, next time anyone says to you that they think their phone is listening to them, it's not. It's systems like this that track the data that you give them. Once you start getting into this, you start to understand what's going on behind the scenes every time you click on anything. All right, let's go back in the last few minutes we've got together here and have a look at some of my tips around the exam and how to do that. So we've had a look at a demo. Here's how we get certified. And I've thrown some things in along the way there, but let's just review in the last few minutes here the exam structure and content and some tips for how to kind of prepare yourself. So the exam is called MB260. It is currently in beta. It could change at any moment. We never quite know when that will be. So, it's out there. Customer Data Platform Specialist. It's a 120-minute exam, 2-hour exam. It's listed at 150 minutes because there's 30 minutes in there for optional questions. The main section has 41 questions, all the same types of questions you would have had if you've done a sales exam, a customer service exam. It's very much at that intermediate level like that. Pick the correct answer from the following, which two of the following are true, drag and drop, all of those things. I had one case study in mind with 9 questions. That might change, but that was the mix of the exam at the time that I did it in beta. This is a copy-paste from the exam syllabus, but just to sort of give you that sense of where we're going with this, and I've highlighted in yellow there those 2 things that I've emphasised as I've talked through the demo. So design customer insight solutions is that very broad, do you have a clue what this is for and how this is going on? That thing about ingesting data, which is that process of kind of pulling things in, but that create customer profiles by unifying data, which is the map, match, merge, power query, understanding how the data sources work, refresh options, different options. That is it's not the vast majority, it's the biggest chunk of something you're going to want to know in there. Implementing those predictions is in there, but then configuring measures and segments is the other thing I've called out. There's a lot of depth in that. So just as you go through all of this, just bear in mind, I'm always pragmatic about investment of study time and learning time against an exam. Go deep on those 2 areas in particular. Configure third-party connections. You need to know it's there, but you don't need to go as deep on all of that stuff. So beyond the basics, go deep on the unify and the data refresh options, all of those things around segmenting exports. There's also some stuff in there I haven't covered around admin roles and different things that different types of users can do in the system. And then related Microsoft technologies. So these are things that we want to, you want to get your head around. Again, you don't have to know all of these things in detail, but get across these concepts. They come up in the learning path. If these things are foreign to you, make sure that you've had, at least an overview of what it is and how it aligns back in there. So we talked a little bit about the common data model here. Microsoft Graph comes in when we're talking about those enrichment pieces. That's what's being used there. I'm assuming you're all familiar with Dataverse. We didn't talk about the Azure part so much here, but just bear in mind that you can bring your own data lake in here. You don't need to have done all of that, but you need to know the building blocks of how those things are configured and the options and the basic setup. There are some questions in there. All right, so to wrap up, here is my kind of advice, my takeaway, call to action for you to go and do something. Get hands-on and get a trial and get some sample data, play around with the things that are configured in there, but make sure you do that part where you're actually doing the unification yourself. I've actually got a little link there, a bit.ly link that I've created, CI Learning Path, which goes to a learning path that I've created out of the exam content. It's just a Microsoft Learn link that you'll be able to go to just to make it a little bit easier for you. It's just a collection that I've created in there that looks like this. So if you want to use that, it's a bit of a shortcut for you. And yeah, make sure you really do get hands-on with those things and use those links that I've provided there for you. All right, that's it from me. As I said, I will happily answer any questions in the chat. So we'll get to those now. And don't forget, feel free to connect with me and follow me across any of those social platforms. Thank you very much. I hope that's been helpful.
Hello. Hi, Lisa.
Hello.
Awesome session.
Thank you. There's quite a lot to take in there, isn't there? Even as I sort of watch it back.
Yeah, there is. You know what? I'm feeling
going
really
on.
excited to go and try the exam now. I need to book it in. And thank you for putting together that learning path as well. That's going to be really helpful for everyone preparing too.
Yeah, I've popped that in the chat. Now, you might notice there's something missing from the shelf behind me, which was the first thing that came
Oh, you
up.
moved it.
I moved to bring it into live view here. So
Oh,
this
nice.
one
We get a
always comes
close-up
up.
view.
Yeah, for those who were commenting on this in the chat, this is my Lego Ghostbusters car. It has moving parts. I should do some kind of YouTube video on this one because everyone comments on it. But if you're into this stuff at all, I would highly recommend the entertainment value of that. It's about the size of a computer keyboard. It's quite big. So yes,
The
there we
doors
go.
open and everything. That's like next level.
There is actually a trap that slides out the back as well. So when you open it up, the trap the trap rolls out the back to catch the ghost. So there you go.
Oh, man, that's cool.
That is real.
Do a YouTube video on it. I think
I will have to do it. Yeah,
generated a lot of excitement, I think, in the chat.
I think so. It's a little bit off brand, except that it's completely on brand as well. Anyway, we did have some other questions in here about actual customer insights, but I had to call that one out since it came up first in the chat. So
we got some love for Lego here from Herb as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, we are live, by the way. So as we're going through, got any real questions, pop it in the chat. We'll see if we can get to it. We've had a lot of interaction and some questions come up during the session. So I reckon I'll start off with probably the most popular thing on people's minds. What is the licensing around
the licensing question? I am always up for answering the licensing question. So customer insights, and we did have a question in the chat that asked about customer service insights. So just to clarify again, that's a completely different thing. Customer service insights is now picked up in the customer service enterprise license. So that's in the CE side of the world, where we've got sales and marketing and customer service applications. Customer service insights used to be a standalone license. I just checked it again while we were in the session, and it's now bundled up. All of those AI features are bundled up as far as I can see in that enterprise license. So that's customer service insights, which is not the same thing as what we're looking at here. Customer insights has its own pricing, which is done very differently from the CE licensing. So your CE licensing is a is a per user license, whereas customer insights is a per tenant license, and you're paying for it. It's a little bit similar. It's more similar to the way that marketing is licensed. So it's licensed on the number of profiles that you're working with. So this is US pricing per tenant per month is $1,500, which includes 100,000 B2C profiles and 10,000 B2B profiles. So I skipped over this a little bit in the demo, but you can actually choose B2B as an option if that's your organization. And then you can have add-on capacity for that. So you can pay extra $1,000 per tenant per month to basically add the same again. So if you start with 100,000 B2C profiles, you add for another $1,000, another one. I'll pop the link for that into the chat here, because what I don't want to do is spend the full 10 minutes that we've got here doing a licensing explanation.
That's
but hopefully
right.
That gives you the overview.
That was actually a really good overview. Yeah. Got to the point fast. I think we got the gist of it there. Thanks for explaining that, Lisa. We have a few other questions here as well. So let me just see. We have one here from Mario. Is Customer Insights a different module from CE?
Yeah, it is. So essentially, I mean, we're in the CE track here, and I'm very passionate about this being part of the CE world, because for those of us who work in this space, it is very much part of that world. But in terms of the actual product itself, it's a separate piece. And I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here, because I can see that Marcus has just asked, is Customer Insights comparable with a CDP? Yes, it is a CDP. It's exactly right. So it sits in that technical category, CDP, Customer Data Platform. So it sits complementary to the CE suite of products, and in particular with the marketing application. So CE, you could pick up your CRM for sales, your customer service application, and so on. You can actually use customer insights completely independently. So someone who's using, we're allowed to say the S word, someone who's using Salesforce, someone who's using completely other systems and not using Dynamics CE at all, could actually use customer insights and pick up those pieces. So it can actually stand alone. Of course, it's got built-in connectors to all the CE stuff, and it's built-in connectors to Dataverse and all those other things. So it's more friendly with the rest of the Microsoft stack. But yeah, it is a customer data platform, and you don't have to be using CE with it as a prerequisite.
All right, great. Also, I liked in your presentation the sneaky comment that we should be using Dynamics 365 marketing. That was a good one.
Oh, look, they are actually best friends. So again, I do in this space where I've worked with the marketing application for a long time, and then customer insights is now it's part of that whole story. So in fact, where we talk about the CE thing and going back to that question, what this is part of now is the customer experience platform. So this kind of goes bigger, which picks up customer insights and marketing, and then a whole bunch of other tools, including, Microsoft advertising, and there's all sorts of clever Azure things and advertising tools and bits and pieces in there. So it's sort of like a whole other technology category that we're getting into with this stuff. So we've got CE and CEX. But yeah, marketing and customer insights are really designed. Again, you can use either one without the other, but the combination of the two is a 1 + 1 is 3, in my opinion.
All right, nice. Let me see what else we have here. So we also have one from Brenda. Did you need to create custom activities for the stay and survey info? That was that part that was in your demo.
So I skipped over that part, and you'll notice that when I was going through that part, I skipped across into sort of some of those standard, because it comes with very rich demo data sets in there, which are really helpful for navigating around. You do still want to do your own thing, but it's one of those things that would take a long time to go through the whole thing. But yeah, you do need to define activities. So what happens is after you've done that upload of the data sources, you can go in and tell customer insights which ones are activities, and it will allow you to select from anything that has at least one date in there. So that part that I showed with the Power Query, where you're ingesting the data sources to start with and choosing the data types, you need to make sure there's something there with a date if you want to make it an activity. And then once it's an activity, that opens up some other things. So it comes up on the customer timeline, which is the piece you see when you look back at the customer profile. That timeline is the thing you can also take out and put into your CRM system, into Dynamics Sales. So that's really valuable. So defining those things as activities is useful. It also, as you start to look at those out-of-the-box prediction models, it will allow you to choose certain activity types. So for instance, there's the customer value one, where it's like the high customer value prediction will allow you to pick up an activity of type sales order, which can be a sales order or a subscription or a transaction or a donation or whatever you want it to be, but you can define different types of activities within that feed through to those models. So yeah, there's a little bit more there that I didn't cover in the demo. So thanks for that question.
All right. Thanks, Lisa. I reckon we got time for one more question. So I reckon after watching this, we're all going to go and book in our exams. You've inspired us. How long
the exam
do you think
is still in beta, by the way, so you can still do that, but you won't get your results straight away. I'm still waiting for mine.
Oh, okay. We'll keep that in mind. But, how long do you probably need to prepare for it, do you think?
Oh, look, it depends where you're starting from. If you're a complete beginner, you're going to want, probably 3 days or so on it. If you've been working with this for a while, 7 or 8 hours, like it depends where you're at to start with. Think about it the same way. We've got people here watching this who I'm sure have done the sales exam or the customer service exam. It's a similar amount of time to that. You'll find things in there that if you haven't done them before, you'll need to go in and spend more time on it. So yeah, it's a whole new area. Think about it the same amount of time as you would dedicate if you were learning, customer service from scratch or something like that. So it's substantial.
Yeah, running off to book my exam after this now.
Yeah.
We are almost at time, Lisa. Is there anything that you wanted to finish off with before we close our Q&A?
Yeah, so I'll go back and check for any questions we've missed in the chat. I can see a couple coming in there right on the knocker, so I'll go back and answer those in the text. I just really want to encourage you to do this. If you're working in the CE space, this is new for us and kind of scary. Like, it is a customer data platform. It's getting into a whole lot of concepts that are different and well out of our comfort zones as people who configure CRM and customer service systems. But like I said, this whole idea of this broader customer experience platform, how it works with marketing, bringing it back into CE, it's really an important complementary part of that whole platform story. So I would just like to really encourage everyone to get into this, at least to be across the broad concepts here, if not expert at everything.
All right. Thank you so much, Lisa, for joining us live, and awesome session. I've said that before, but really great. Excited to get our hands on it now. Thank you also, everyone, for coming along and watching and asking your questions.
Excellent. Thanks, everyone, for joining, and good luck with your exam if you do it.